Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm Tony Perkins. Glad to have you with us. When the U.S. Supreme Court agreed last week to review Mississippi's 2018 law on abortion, it not only set the stage for the court's newly expanded conservative majority to take a shot at Roe v. Wade, but it also put the abortion issue front and center ahead of the midterm elections. And my next guest says it will be very interesting to see how public opinion on the issue might change as people hear more about the case and other facets of the abortion issue that they have not been aware of. Joining me now to talk about this is Pollster Scott Rasmussen. He's the publisher of scottrasmussen.com. Scott, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you today.
A lot has happened in 30 years since the court last took up the abortion issue directly in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. I mean, you've got two political parties that are at the polar opposites on this issue, clearly. I mean, their party platform says it. You've got just in the last week of April, you had 28 different abortion restriction laws, pro-life measures going forward from 7 different states. In the last decade, we've seen more activity on this than the entire 30 previous years combined. So what might we anticipate?
Well, the first thing to recognize when you talk about this in terms of the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade is a majority of voters do not know what would happen if Roe v. Wade was overturned. 30% think that abortion would be outlawed everywhere in the country. 26% simply don't know what would happen. So this is a talking point for both sides. But if this issue is taken up in a serious way by the Supreme Court, and if they hand out a major decision on the topic, I would expect people to learn a lot more about exactly what that court ruling would make. And that will have a big impact on how this plays out as a political issue.
Yeah, I think, of course, the left supporters of abortion say that if the court takes up Roe v. Wade, which they are going to take it up, but that this could end abortion in the country, which is really not the result. I don't see that happening. What I see happening is that this would go back to the states. And I think even the actions the states are taking, many of those states putting trigger mechanisms in place that if the court does allow the states to deal with this as they did at one time, they will ban it. But I mean, it's not going to be completely eliminated in the country, but I think it's going to allow states to, identify themselves as either pro-life or pro-abortion. And, if people feel that strongly about it, they can move to another state.
Well, that's it. I mean, the laws in New York will certainly be different than the laws in Mississippi. The laws in Idaho will look different than they look in California. This is part of the political process, and it is something that is likely to happen. But, again, we talk about the court ruling and this Roe v. Wade debate. A large number of people believe that it's too easy to get an abortion in America. In fact, that is the plurality position. So the idea of tightening some restrictions is not, as people on the political left would have you believe, something that is greatly opposed by the American people. There is a desire to place some restrictions. And let's be honest, there's also a great desire to take into account the wishes of a young woman who's in a difficult position.
When we talk politics and elections, we often have to focus today in such a divided country politically about intensity. Where is the intensity on this issue?
Well, the intensity on this issue is generally with the pro-life side. So if this becomes a bigger issue, I think that helps get Republican turnout a little bit stronger. We're already seeing Republicans more fired up about the midterm elections than Democrats. Obviously, a very long way to go. But for many Democrats, the primary reason to turn out in 2020 was to get Donald Trump out of office. So with that removed from the equation, a lot of Democrats are saying, okay. So at the moment, on both the issue of abortion, the pro-life issue, and on the issue on general politics, intensity is with the political right. Now, Supreme Court could drop a bombshell and change that, and not just on this one issue, but it would be the Democrats are in a very difficult position heading into the midterms.
So this is one issue, but what are some of the other issues that are driving intensity for conservative voters?
Well, the first thing you have to recognize, COVID is the biggest issue for everybody. That's an argument. How do we get out of it? How do we make the transition back to normal? That's going to play out in a very significant way. The question that's related to that is the U.S. economy. For conservatives, the other big issue is concern about Second Amendment rights. That will also be something watched very closely. And when you talk about those issues, if you're talking about how we transition away from this pandemic back to some sense of normalcy, you talk about the economy, you talk about Second Amendment, and you talk about pro-life issues. That is the real area, or those are the real areas of concern for conservative voters.
And Scott, if there was happened to be another outbreak of the virus going near the election time, and you saw governments cracking down again, like we saw with the forced masking, the distancing, the shutdowns, that's obviously going to be a factor in the election and the intensity.
Right. And, look, back in 2020, I am convinced that the reason that Donald Trump ended up narrowly losing the election was because he tested positive for COVID. The reason I say that, we were tracking every week. He was making progress in the polls because people were beginning to believe the pandemic was mostly behind us. Optimism was growing about it. When the president tested positive, pessimism jumped again, and really it never recovered until January, when the vaccines became available. And so, yes, anything that happens with that pandemic and the government response to it would have a huge impact on election 2022.
Well, Scott, I have a feeling we're going to be talking with you a lot between now and the midterm election. So thanks so much for joining us today. As always, great to talk with you.
Thank you. Have a great day.